Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we discuss the most fascinating topics of life. I'm Tyler Yaw with my co-host, Chris Keller, and each week we interview a special guest to learn how they acquired their wisdom over a glass of whiskey. So, sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy Whiskey and Wisdom.
This week, we bring on Emily Tippet, one of my close friends and an amazing potter in the local pottery scene.
But first, Chris, what are we sipping on?
Well, this week, Tyler found a local, well, we call it local, Emily doesn't, distillery from Little River, South Carolina. It's called 12 Distillery.
1233.
1233?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that's how you read it.
Yeah.
And this one's the Restitution Rye Whiskey. This one's new. I don't know anything about it.
I got to visit the distillery a few weeks ago, and their rye especially is fantastic. All of their whiskeys there are pretty good, but the rye was my favorite.
What's their other option?
They just have like a regular bourbon there.
Mm-hmm.
It's very smooth, I will say.
Well, let's try it out. Cheers.
Cheers. Is very smooth.
That's different.
The distillery's only been open for a little over 3 years, so their whiskeys have just started coming out. And super smooth for a 3-year whiskey.
Yeah. I'm intrigued as to what it's going to taste like when you hit like that, the good year mark. Like you hit the 5 and the 9.
5 and 9, yeah.
Yeah. So, Emily, I know a little bit about yourself, but please tell us just a bit more.
Okay, so I'm a Wilmington local. So I grew up here. And I grew up here, moved here when I was 1. I have 4 siblings. That's all you need to know about me, honestly.
Great podcast.
Yep,
It's over.
yep. Good job, guys. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time. Nah, so you're local.
I am.
Where'd you go to school?
Hoggard.
Ooh.
Because, let's be honest, that's all we care about is high school.
Bucktown.
Oh, yikes.
You
Go
knew
Vikings.
that. Come on.
I know, but still yikes.
I know you've grown up here. You did all the fun things. And I feel like there's a part of your life that you don't talk about all the time.
Oh, middle school? Like, who likes to talk about middle school?
No one talks
No
about
one talks about that. No. But you, like a lot of people in Wilmington, and by a lot, I mean like all the people I end up knowing for some reason, grew up in church, right?
Yep.
Were you like when we showed up all the time? Were you like pastor's kid? Like, why were you in church all the time?
Because I love Jesus. No, I grew up in church. My dad went to seminary when I was in kindergarten. So we moved to Wake Forest actually for a year. And then he was on staff at Port City until I was 15. And then he did mission work. And so I was like very involved, very like there. I was homeschooled as well during elementary school. So I was like, my parents were on staff, or my dad was, and then my mom was there. And then we just went there all the time. And then my dad was on staff at another church. And then we started our own church about 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, grew up there, was there probably 3-4 days out of the week.
I was going to say at that age, about 8 years ago. So like that was a lot for the family then. So you're probably there, like you said, 24/7 just about.
Yeah. Now, when we started our church, we did like more of a home church style.
I see, okay.
So like it's more like we really believe in like family and like those relationships. So my parents just like opened the home and just like, hey, like this is what we're doing. And we really want to reach people that aren't being reached and just like, this is how we're doing it. And so we started out in a home.
Nice.
Which is really fun.
Yeah.
So when you say your dad became a missionary, that meant the whole family?
No, we were based in Wilmington, and he would like leave for like a couple weeks to a month or 2 and then come back. So he did that for 2 years.
Okay. Is there a place that he went more often than not?
I'm trying to think. Honestly, I was like 15, 16. I'm like, my dad's leaving. But I was like, but he's missing my basketball game more so than like,
right.
He's in this cool place. Like he went to Congo and India and all this stuff. So.
Oh, wow.
He went to India?
Oh, yeah. He's been there like 12 times.
Did he bring anything back? I'm just picking. You went to India, though.
I was going to say, I don't know if he brought me anything back. He did. I just can't. I don't know, obviously.
So you guys go to India too then?
Yeah. So when I was 19, my dad like kept on going back to India, and we started out in missions when I was young. And so like we would go to Africa. I went to Africa when I was 10, and my whole family went, and my little brother, he was 2. So 8 years younger than me. So there's like all of us. And then I like went back to Africa 2 other times, and my dad just kept on going back to India. And I was like, why are you going back to India? Never had any interest in going to India. And he was like, you should just come and see. And I was like, do I really want to go to India? No, I don't think so. And so then I was like, okay, I'm coming to India. And so I went and then hated it. Literally hated it. I was like, day 3, I like went into my dad's room just crying. I was like, this is not my place. And why am I here? He goes, tomorrow's going to be your day. Tomorrow's going to be your day. I was like, okay. And so I went and got to go like on the streets and got to hang out with the street children and just like the families there. And I just like fell in love with the people and the culture. And so I was like, all right, I love India. It was just like that. It was just like a switch like that. So yeah.
You knew.
Yeah. And so like I'm into pottery. And so I wanted to go to this trade school after college. My parents are very unconventional. After I graduated high school, they were like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I would love to be a mom and do pottery and just, like do ministry out my home. And they're like, okay, so do you need a degree for that? And I was like, no. And they're like, okay, so why are we going to go get a communications degree? And I was like, because that's what you do. You get a 4-year degree. And they're like, okay, go to Cape Fear, figure out if you actually want to like do anything, and then we'll go from there. I was like, all right. So I did it. And I was just like, I just continued to do pottery, and I was going to go to this trade school, and I didn't get the work scholarship or the work study. And so it was like $10,000 for like 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow. Ooh.
And my parents were like, if this is like what you want to do, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll figure it out. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's like, I was like, I could buy a new car with that. Like, no. And so my dad was like, I just think you should travel. And I was like, I'm 20 years old and you're telling me to go travel. He's like, yeah. So I met a girl when I was in India, and she was from London. And I was like, hey, can I come visit you? She was like, yeah. And I was like, do you want to go to France? I have some friends there. We can go like stay with them. She was like, yeah. So I like popped there, and then I went to India for a couple months by myself. Like,
oh, nice.
I stayed with a family. But yeah. So I just kept on going back. I did that about 4 times.
Oh, wow. So it went from like the worst experience in the world to like one of your favorite places.
Yeah. It was, I have some great moments there for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I got my nose pierced there. So that's pretty cool. Like, actually, I almost passed out, but, other than that, it was pretty cool.
I mean, you got to get something to come back from.
Yeah, right. I was like, guys, I'm going to get my nose pierced. It's fine.
So, question, pottery, why?
Long story short, like, I'm severely dyslexic and have auditory processing disorder. So school was, like, hard. And I was taking, like, a lot of, like, honors and, like, English and history this one semester, and we're like, we need a class to balance you out. And I was like, okay. My brother's like, take pottery. He goes, I loved it. It's easy. Like, it's just like, not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. But like,
seem like it's easy at all.
It's not easy. But like, it's an easy class. Like, you don't have homework from it.
Sure.
And so I was like, okay. And then I'm sitting in class and I'm like looking at that pottery wheel, and you don't get to do that the first semester in ceramics 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do that. I want to make something perfect. And then ceramics 2, I like tried the wheel, and I was like, oh, I'm obsessed. And then I just like didn't stop. And so they had to create, so it only went up to like ceramics 4. And I was like, this is my last semester. I'm taking another ceramics class. They're like, okay, we'll create a ceramics 5. Just write a paper. It's due at the end of the semester. I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. So yeah, at Hoggard, because Hoggard's the best. Go Vikings.
No, I asked this because I have some old school pottery.
Oh, yikes.
From Tippet. It's not mine. My wife brought it when we moved, and I'm like, this is so amazing to see like the growth from like point A to point B. And I'm trying to figure out how you went from loving pottery and traveling to making this business. Because, I mean, the name is kind of cool. What is it?
More than clay. Because it's more than just clay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, though.
Yeah.
So, like for me, like my heart is like people to experience love through like everything. Like, and so like if you can have those quiet moments in the morning with your cup of coffee, like, and like this nice little mug is like, it's more than just clay, right? You're just having that quiet moment. And like, if it's with the Lord, that's amazing. If it's not, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like creating those small moments. And like, that's like my heart. And so it's more than just clay. It's like, I want to create an experience for you. But yeah, that's how the name, well, I actually didn't come up with the name. Oh. My friend did. When I was 19, before my business even like was even a thought, my mom was like, we're going to name your business. And I was like, I don't have a business. And she's like, you're going to have a business. And I was like, okay, cool. And then they're sitting at the softball field and my mom texted me, what do you think about More Than Clay? And I was like, I love it. And then my brother like snagged the, whatever the internet stuff. And then like made me business cards. Like it was so professional. And I was like, I'm not going to do anything with this. And then I traveled. And so how I paid for most of my trips is I would do pottery.
Okay.
Sell it at one time and then buy a plane ticket.
Oh, wow.
And so that's kind of what I did for a couple years. And then I moved from Wilmington to Virginia to work with this ministry. And then I just really felt in my spirit that I was moving back to Wilmington. And my family was like, all right, it's your turn to start your business. And they're like, you just need to do it. And I was like, I can't do it. No one can live off of like being an artist. And they're like, yeah, just do it. And I was like, okay, here I go. And so I did it. And so that was about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's how it started. I was like, it took me a while to.
So does the pottery business still have a aspect of ministry to it?
I would hope so. I don't know, like, if I technically, like, say is a ministry. But, like, for me, it's, like, is moments with the Lord. And so, like, in my studio, I have moments with the Lord and stuff. And, like, I do, like, pray over my pieces and, like, just being like, Lord, like, I just pray that this piece blesses this person and stuff like that. And it is cool, too, because some people will ask at events, like, why is it more than clay? And so I can explain that. And so I'm just like, you know, that's, like, little ways that I can do it. But I don't think, for me, I don't just, like, flat out just being like, buy my cup, Jesus loves you, because like I don't feel like that's just like, that's not how I roll. I'm just like, Jesus loves you, but like I'll show you different ways.
Right. It's cool that it takes you get those little moments though with the people that do ask about it.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. So many people ask me like, do you have your own kiln? Which I guess is like kind of like weird to think about. A kiln. Okay. Sorry. Do you want me to tell you what a kiln is? A kiln is like what you fire the pottery in. And so you throw it, you let it dry, and then you throw it in the kiln. And they're like, do you have a kiln? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, wow. But what's really cool is I have a small kiln that I paid $700 for.
Wow.
And it's great. And that was like half price. And then, these things are expensive. Yeah. But then I was like, I just need a bigger kiln. But like, I didn't have the means to buy a new kiln. So I was talking to my friend one day and I was just like, I just need like a bigger kiln. And I'm just like really asking the Lord to like, okay, you're going to provide. Like, I believe that you're the provider, but I don't know what that means. And like, I don't know what that looks like in this instance. And her and her husband came over like 2 days later and she's like, so funny thing is the morning before we hung out, I felt like the Lord was telling me to give you your kiln or give me her kiln.
Right.
And I was like, and she goes, I said, okay, Lord, if she mentions that she needs a new kiln, I'm going to give it to her. And so like me not knowing anything, I was just like telling her, I'm like, yeah, I'm just like really praying for a new kiln. And 2 days later, her and her husband brought me this like big kiln. And I was like,
wow.
here you go. And I'm like, wow, Jesus is so cool. So it's cool too, because I can like share that story with people when they're like, do you have a kiln? I'm like, yes. Do you want to know how I got it? So, but
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's fun.
Those things ain't cheap to fix either.
No, I can imagine.
No, it's not.
I'm going to steal Chris's thing. I have a random question now. Do you watch that show on Netflix?
What
about
The Pottery Show?
the pottery show?
That's on HBO.
It is HBO.
But the Great Pottery Throwdown?
Maybe it is on HBO. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
The one on Netflix is Blown
Away, which is a
That's the
glass blowing one.
Maybe I'm
but
getting
it's
them
really
confused.
cool.
But yeah, so the one on HBO then, not Netflix. Do you ever watch that and think of like, oh my gosh, like what are the things I can do? I can be on there and whatnot.
Yeah, I actually go over to Chris and Emily's house to watch it because I don't have HBO, and I'm like, hey, you guys want to hang out, aka watch Great Pottery Throwdown?
That's awesome.
She does.
I'll come sit on the couch. I'm like, guys, watch, and they're like, that's cool.
Great.
But yeah, I actually learned some forms and stuff by watching, because like if you kind of know what you're doing and you can like watch potters, and you're like, oh, so that's how you do it, and it just kind of like, you know. But we were watching it one night, and I was like, I want to go on the show, because I just think it would be a cool experience. Like, I would love to learn, and I love like other potters and just like hang out with them. I'm like, it'd be so much fun. You have to be a UK citizen, or at least live there for a year or something. And I was like,
really?
Because we had this conversation, because I'm like, oh, this is a cool show. Why don't you do it? And she's like, oh, I've looked this up. And she's like, well, I'd have to move to the UK and be a citizen for at least a year. And we went over this right as COVID was like popping off. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Well,
that's not going to happen.
No. But the UK does it, like they do, like their filming schedule is different than like most shows here. Because I feel like most of the shows here do like a week of filming for an episode and they go to the next one.
Right.
And like if it's not the Great Pottery Throwdown is kind of cool because they let them, like it takes a whole week for all their stuff to go down because it's pottery. You can't
It's a long process. I will tell you that.
And they do a whole week of filming, and you're like, oh, hey, we did a week, but they get to go stay in a hotel. They get to go home. They get to do something.
Wow.
Because the same thing happened because we were watching like the Great British Bake Off or something.
Great British Baking Show.
That's on Netflix.
That's on Netflix, and I cry it every time. Don't ask me why, but I do. It's a cooking show. And they're so nice.
But they get a whole. They're like, hey, you go home for a week. And then you come back on the weekends and you do the cooking. So they get time to like learn their stuff. And I was like, how do you film this during COVID?
Yeah.
But I think during COVID, I don't think they got to go home. I think they had to stay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's still like a cool.
Since we kind of went into it a little bit, for everyone listening and me, because I don't have a clue, what is the process of making pottery?
Okay. So you start with a ball of clay. And then you throw it on the wheel, and so you throw something. Mm-hmm. So if I was throwing a coffee mug, I would throw it, take it off the wheel, and let it dry. And so then you want to let it get leather hard, which means you can still like trim it, but it's not going to fold in when you touch it.
Okay.
And so then you pull a handle, let that dry. You trim your coffee mug, and then you add the handle, and then you let that dry. But like because you're attaching something, you have to let it dry slowly because if it dries at different speeds, it can like pop off or crack. And so you do that, and then you do the first firing. After the first firing, which is a bisque kiln, you glaze it, and then you fire it again, which is a glaze firing. So it sounds like a short process, but it's really not.
How long is it, like, if you were making that mug, how long would it take you from start to finish?
It's about 2 weeks with like all things, but like I'm throwing multiple pieces at a time, but like I will tell you, weather like plays a big part in it.
Sure.
Which like some people are like, wait, what? But I'm like, if it's raining, there's moisture in the air, so my pots aren't going to dry. Like they're gonna stay wet. And so like, which is really annoying when you're like ready to trim it. But like I said, like you don't want to dry things out too fast because they'll get S cracks on the bottom, which if you ever like they're still functional, but they're just not pretty. And like if you ever like pick up a mug or a bowl and then you just see a little crack, that's an S crack. But yeah, or like plates will warp and it's annoying. Plates are fun.
What's your favorite thing to throw?
I actually got really into bowls, which bowls are the easiest thing to throw on the wheel. I couldn't do it. My professor was like, you can't throw a bowl. I was like, I can't. Because in high school, she's like, you're going to throw a cylinder. And I was like, okay. So I mastered a cylinder. I couldn't, like, you pull out of the clay and you pull it up and you, like, gravity helps you. But yeah, I just couldn't do it for the longest time. So now I got good at it. And so I'm like, I love bowls and I love trimming bowls. I think that's mostly why. But my best seller is a vase. It's called the circle. I call it the circle vase. And it's a circle vase and it's hollow. It's a donut shaped form. Oh, okay. So it's a very common like form in pottery, and then it's hollow. And then there's like 3 holes. So if we're looking at a donut, so if you're looking at a donut, the top has 2 holes and the bottom has 1. And so you can put flowers through it and it's standing up on its side. Yep. So it's pretty cool.
That's neat.
Yeah. It's fun.
You're the only person I know who makes those.
Yeah. It's a very common form, but like I've kind of like, they usually have a foot and a neck on it. So it kind of looks more like a jug type thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. It's a very old form.
Yeah.
For pottery, it seems like a very niche thing, and it seems like niche things in Wilmington are extremely popular. What's the pottery community like in Wilmington, if there even is one?
Oh, it's amazing.
Really?
Y'all, I've had some beautiful problems with my kiln lately, and the amount of potters that reached out and say, hey, I have some extra space in my kiln, or like, hey, if I'm not using it this week, like, would you like to use my kiln? Like, I'm sorry, that's amazing. Like the fact that like we're in the same city and you're like, hey, come over and use my kiln. Like we do the same thing. Like, I don't know. I just think that's like a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Just like how they support you.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. I started crying one day. I was like, thank you so much. I needed to get this done. So.
Do you have a website? Like because I know you make a lot of pottery things. And I say pottery things because there's too many things to name. But where do you sell all these things? Because websites, shipping, I know how much shipping is right now.
Shipping is awful, and it gives me anxiety.
Well, yeah, because it's pottery.
Oh, yeah. You think about that.
Yeah, and you just have to make sure it's like very secure. And I do have a website, but everything says it's out of stock because I don't know how to use it. My friend made me this beautiful website, and I was like, this is too complicated. And because my stuff moves so fast, I'm just like, I need a simpler way. So honestly, all I do is Instagram. And so I like post things on my story and stuff, and then like random things, like random posts. But people I'm like, just DM me or email me. And then like, if you're looking for a coffee mug that's blue, like I'll send you pictures of it. Or I'll make like 5 options and say, hey, does this look like something you want? And then I just like send an invoice through Square and like that. And then I do a lot of markets.
Markets? Mm-hmm. Like flea market?
Yeah, like big like events, yeah.
Oh, okay. And that sounded stupid, but I grew
like
up
here. Like Brooklyn Art Center, I'm doing one at Carolina Beach. It's like this big one. It's my first time doing it this year. The Orange Street Festival, like
I've heard of it.
Yeah, the Art Walk.
Yeah,
one of those things. I was like, I'm doing it. I need to get know what they're doing. But
we mentioned that the pottery space is big. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's still extremely competitive, or that like you don't have a foothold? Because I feel like in jewelry, because that's where we come from, or at least me currently, there's so much stuff that looks the exact same, and you're like, well, if you walk into that store, you're probably going to buy it there. Do you feel like that's the same for you, or do you have like a niche, like I make this?
Like you said earlier, there's not many potters that do the donut form, so that's very that's what I'm kind of known for. And I do more of neutral colors. I have a little bit of like pop of color. Honestly, there's a couple potters that use like the speckled white that I use, but like mostly everyone has their own little like style, which is such a beautiful thing in pottery, because like no one's going to throw the same way. No one's going to pull a handle the same way and attach it the same way. It's just it's going to be different because we all learn from different people and we're all different people. But yeah, so I think for me personally, like I have my things that I'm known for, and Yeah. I mean, I think, yes.
2 things.
Okay.
Because I know what you're known for is the pink coming back.
The pink is back for right now.
So we could have it
someone
for Mother's Day.
who doesn't know what you're talking about, what does this mean?
I have a pink glaze, and my professor from Cape Fear, we had it when I was there, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was like, it looks like baby pink, and I don't. But someone's like, do you have pink? And I was like, you know what? I feel like I don't see a lot of potters do pink.
Yeah.
So I texted my professor. I was like, hey, so you remember that pink color that I hated? Could I get that recipe? He was like, yeah, we actually made it a water glaze, which just means it's a thinner glaze. And so I layer it with my white, and it's pretty. I think it's pretty. I'm not a big pink person in general, but I really like the pink.
I mean, it looks good, especially going in the springtime, Mother's Day, cough, cough. But that I remember for a while, people were like, do you have the pink?
Yeah. So I had a problem making the pink. So I got a different brand of, what is it called? I'm blanking on what it's called, but basically the coloring. And I was like, why is this not working? I went the cheaper route, and I regretted it because I ended up spending more money. But I found a half of a bucket of pink glaze that I have. So it's back until I can't. So right now you can't really get glaze materials.
Really?
So where I was getting it, they can't get glaze materials, and so I can't buy it from them. So I was using like a local pottery place. And so now I'm like, so I have to figure out how to make my own glazes. I don't think I want to do that, but we might have to. We'll see.
So
To be determined.
The supply chain's affecting the pottery industry.
Oh my gosh, so much.
Wow.
It's like I can't. I'm going up to Asheville this weekend, and I'm like, I'm bringing back 15 boxes of clay. And
Oh my goodness.
because it's like, that's where I can get it. And and shipping that stuff is really expensive.
I'm sure. Yeah.
This is heavy.
Yeah.
It is very heavy. It's 50 pounds a box.
Jeez. How much does 50 pounds of clay make you? Like if you were to put it in terms of like mugs or something.
Okay, mugs, I would say 50 pounds of clay would be 3, 6, 12, sorry, this is me doing math. I'm like, I should know that by now, but I usually just get bored of making mugs, so then I'll start throwing something else.
Yeah.
So I would say about 40.
Okay. So a little bit more than like a pound per.
Okay, let me take that back. I'm going to say 35 because you have to, and if we're including like the handles.
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, about 30, 35.
Sense.
Yeah.
So I throw about, depending on what shape of mug I'm doing, it's about a pound and a half that I throw with.
How many boxes did you say you're bringing back then?
15.
You make a ton of pottery then. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just started wedding registries too. So like plates and stuff take like 4 or 5 pounds of clay, which I know it's like really surprising, but like you have to think too, the clay shrinks. So when it loses the moisture, it shrinks and like solidifies. It shrinks about 12%. The clay that I use, like 12, 15%. So you always add a little bit of clay to something. But yeah, plates.
Gosh.
4 or 5 pounds.
Does that mean when it's losing all of its weight in water, is that why it's so much lighter than 4 or 5 pounds? Because I'm sure your plates don't weigh.
Yeah.
I was giving her a stank eye. I was like, 5 pounds for a plate?
Yeah, I think I use 4.4 pounds of clay, actually. That's what I have on my board. But it loses it, the weight. The water is a lot of it. But then also you add weight with the glaze. So depending on what glaze you use, if you use more than one glaze and stuff, it adds weight. And so that's also something like the pink, I think adds a little bit more weight than like just having a solid white. Yeah. Which is interesting.
That is interesting.
So what's your most popular color? I know this is just a random one.
Speckled white.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, maybe because I make a lot of speckled white because I like it. But I think speckled white. I think pink is like the unique. And then you just have you have your blue people that are like, I need my blue pottery. Like, I feel like blue is very mountainy. My blue isn't mountainy.
No.
I know mine isn't, but people are like, I love blue. And so then I have my blue people, I have my pink people, and then I need neutral. And then that's my speckled white people. But most people are like, neutral, you can go with anything. And that's usually what I say. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can do anything with this. Like if you want to switch up your house, you have blue, you're going to have to like either buy something different or you're going to have to make it around your utensil holder. Sorry.
So how long does it take you to figure out like colors? Because like I said earlier, I have some classic MTC pieses.
They're so bad.
And they are not any of these neutral colors.
No, they were not. I used to really be into like really bright greens and blues and blacks.
I have an orange one too.
Oh yeah, that was an experiment. So I was sitting down with my brother and he was like, okay, what do you want your brand to be? And I said, I don't know. He's like, well, what do you like? And I was like, I love neutrals. He's like, all right, so how can we do neutral pottery? I was like, okay, let me find a white glaze. And so then I found my white glaze. And then I have a blue. I'm like, because I do like a little pop of color here and there. And so I found a blue I really liked. And then I found a brownish color. It's like brownish orange. It's called nutmeg that people love. But then sometimes they don't. I don't know. It's just depending on season too. And then a black because I was like, I wanted something to attract more men because I feel like sometimes the speckled white, they're like, I want something a little bit more manlier. Yeah. But I also love my black as a gloss black. And then I'm not going to do a matte black. It's ugly. The one that I tried, it was not good. But yeah, so my brother's just like, how do you, like, what do you want it to be? And then I was like, neutrals with a little pop. And so that's kind of how I started my glazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you ever going to bring the green back? Or a green back?
There's a green I liked, but I had so many problems with it. I just discarded it.
Like, what do you mean? Because we're normal people. We don't know what the issues would be with
it had
glazing.
It's called crazing. And so basically what happens when you fire something and your glaze, you dip it, okay, and you let it dry. So it looks like you just dipped it in paint, let's say. And then so in the kiln, it melts. And so with crazing, it comes like, it'll strip away the glaze and leave like just the clay body. And so the green kept on doing that and pulling it away, and then it ruins your piece. And sometimes your kiln shelves.
Ooh.
So, which I didn't know in the beginning, you put stuff on there to prevent that, but I now have that on there.
Live and learn.
Yeah.
It's a good learning process.
Yeah, green definitely helped me learn.
I'm so sad.
I know.
Green is the accent of the recording studio.
Oh, I do like this green though, but that green's hard to find. Some colors are harder to find too, like reds. If you get a good red, it's expensive.
Really?
Because it's harder to make. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have thought that.
How do you make the glazes then?
I don't know. A lot of chemicals. I didn't do chemistry, but like you just mix a lot of chemicals. And then, so I buy bags of dry clay. And so it has all the things that it needs for that color. Okay. And then I put it in a bucket, and then I put water in the bucket, and then I mix it up and then sieve it. And so it gets all the clunks out and everything. And then I make sure it's the right thickness, because if you put too much water in it, it's going to be super thin and it's going to be ugly. And if it's like too thick, it'll either run depending on what glaze you're using, and so sometimes you get cool drips out of it, but then sometimes you're like, no, it looks bad. But yeah, and then it's too thick and it'll run.
Too many C's is a bad thing in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one of those things where like nature kind of takes its course for part of it too? Or are you at the point where like if you put something in, it's pretty much going to come out right?
You never know.
Really?
Like I feel like I never know. It's always a gamble. I mean, like you kind of like you have an idea. Like so if I dip it in my white glaze, and the way if it doesn't hit anything and if it just sits perfectly, I'm like, this is going to be base, but it sometimes depends on where it's in the kiln and like, what it's beside. It's a weird thing, but like with my blue glaze, it's a runnier glaze. And so like, depending on where it is in the kiln, it'll drip, which sometimes looks really cool, or sometimes it ruins the pot.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's weird. So I feel like pottery is definitely a business where you work by yourself.
Yeah, it's lonely sometimes.
And we were talking, like in general, COVID's just been one of those things that just ruins just all the funness. And you're like, I don't get to do anything. What have you done, like yourself, to not be just in a bubble?
Like just in general with my life.
Like what do you do outside of
I joined a gym that I like literally like, it created such a cool community that I didn't know I needed. I also have like amazing friends in Wilmington that I hang out with, but I think for me, I'm consistently going to the gym 5 days a week and I'm seeing these people. So I'm like, you guys might know more about my life than some of my friends because I see them every day. Yeah. And so and I nanny as well. And so I'm like either in the studio by myself or I'm hanging out with kids. So I'm like, I need adult time, like conversation, please. And
Understand.
So it's like, so I'm just like, okay. And so I like found a gym that I love and then community there. So, and then my church community, they're pretty cool.
So even growing up in church and being as involved as you were then, are you as involved now?
Yeah. So our church is a little unconventional as my family is. So we do these things called gather groups. So what happens is the first Sunday, and so we kind of felt like the Lord was leading us that direction before COVID. And then when COVID hit, we did like online services. And then when it was like safer to do things, we started meeting in homes. And so we have like different bases around Wilmington. And so I get to host one of the gather groups. So I have like 20, 30 people at my house now on 3 Sundays out of the month. And it's a beautiful, I love it. I'm like, I love having people in my house. I love hosting. And so it's fun having people and just like worshiping together.
How are the gather groups different than a traditional Sunday service other than being at individuals' houses? Yeah.
So we really our heart is for relationship and discipleship. And so I think that creates an atmosphere. So we come in, we're like talking, we're getting coffee, and then we're usually about 15, 20 minutes late, as all churches should be, right? And then we do acoustic worship. And then after that, we watch. So my dad, who's the pastor, will usually him, we have some guest speakers, but record a message. And what's cool about the gather groups is that we're all getting the same word because we're under the same, church and the same body. And so we're all watching that. And then usually he leaves a question for us or like something that we should discuss. And so we break up into groups and we talk about that. And then we cook together and we have a meal together. And so what I think has made the biggest difference is the food and just like that time. And we can like talk about like, man, that like really made an impact on like what I'm going through right now and being able to carry that conversation rather than just like, that was a good little like 5 minutes with the question, but it's just like actually giving intentional time to have those conversations. And like, we don't do that all the time. Like we do meals every time, but like sometimes we go out and play spike ball. Yeah. Like, we just like, like we'll go out there and like, all right, we're going to play spike ball. But we create space. And I think that's the beautiful thing is like people want to be known. Yeah. Even if they don't know if they want to be known, they want to feel loved. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel known. And I feel like if you create a safe space for that, people will come and,
Yeah. That's amazing. Kind of builds that closer community there and trust. I know when I first came to Wilmington, I went to a relatively large church, and it's one of those things where, especially not knowing anyone, you would go in, you get the word from the pastor, you turn around, you walk out, and you still never talk to anyone. Right. So you still never got the community that church was supposed to bring to you in the first place. So I think that's really neat. I hadn't heard about anything like that before. So that's fantastic. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. It was funny. Our joke is like, you can't hide at the refinery. Like we're going to be like, hey, how you doing? Yeah. Like, you can't hide.
No sitting in the back there.
But I think that's kind of cool is, like you said, most churches are just big, and I feel like this is bad to say, but a lot of them have turned in just productions. And so I've known a lot of people who stepped away from just different beliefs because they were tired of the production that was going on, whether or not they learned anything from it. But they kind of are like, I want to step aside and like figure out exactly what my mind is thinking and trying to wrap it around all this stuff. And I feel like your gather groups allows people the ability to not be like, oh my gosh, I'm like one of 1,000 just paying tithes, just doing this, and you're not really part of a thing. It's I feel like,
well, you take the relationship out of that. When you're going to that, you're just checking off the list. Like, I'm there, I did my tithes, like that's great. And it's like you take the relationship out. And I think that's one thing that like is a relationship with the Lord, and it's a relationship with Jesus, and like knowing more about him and learning more about him. Like you're going to be desire to be around people like that. But I also think, because you said like people are coming, like leaving churches because it's the production stuff. But I think the great thing is about the Lord is like, he can take your questions. Like the hard question is like, well, if they're doing that, like, I don't agree with that. So like why Jesus? And like we might not always get the answers we want to hear, or we might not even get the answers now, but like he can take those questions. And that's like, I don't know. I always feel at peace about that. It's like, I can be angry right now and I can ask you all these questions and yell and all that stuff. But then I still know that you love me and you're here and you're the provider and X, Y, and Z. But yeah, okay, continue.
Yeah, no, that kind of leads great. I've been to a bunch of different churches, especially around Wilmington. And the one thing they always talk about is that church is that community of where like-minded people, as in believes in Christ or believes there are a higher being, which is why they're searching for Christ, come together. And the one thing that I feel like misses a lot of times is a lot of these, especially larger churches, are either getting too politicized or they're getting too much like a large business. So it's really interesting with those groups that you have where it eliminates that ability to become a business and to become a political aspect of the church. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, we talk in staff. I'm on staff like quarter time. I say it's quarter because I'm barely on it. But in staff, we are constantly asking the Lord, like, what do you want from us? Like, how can we best serve you? What is your vision? What are you dreaming for us? And so we're constantly asking questions like, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Like, if not, how do we change? How do we shift? And I think that's like, and I'm not saying other churches aren't doing that, but I think I get to see firsthand just like how we're asking and like how we're listening and just being like, okay, like, is this what we're supposed to be doing and stuff like that?
How does outreach look for you guys with not having like a solid brick and mortar type of location?
So we do have like a church. And what's beautiful about our church is we shifted it into a co-working space. Okay. And so it's open like Monday through Thursday from 10 to 4. And so like people in the community can come and use this space. Oh, neat. So it's a very like cool thing. And not many people know about it because like we're very small, but then like word of mouth, people started like coming and stuff like that, which is really cool. But people just like, it's like the weirdest thing sometimes. Like there's this girl who typed in Google, she's like churches in Wilmington, and the refinery came up first. That was the Lord, because we're a small church. We don't pay for anything. I don't know how the internet works, honestly. But she like emailed my mom and she was like, hey, I'm interested in visiting. Like, what's your deal? And then she came to a chili cook-off and we met and then she started coming to church. And and so she tried out our gather groups. And usually when someone emails us, we're like, okay, like kind of get a little bit of information. It's like, what are you looking for? Like, are you married with kids? Are you single? Or like, what's your age range and stuff like that, and try to find the best like gather group for them. But yeah, we just emails the Lord, honestly, or like word of mouth, just randomly. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, we have a first Sunday, which is really cool. So all the gather groups, because like for me, I'm like, I want to see, because I mean, I've been there since the start, but like, I'm like, I miss seeing the people in the other gather groups. And
Right.
so the first Sunday is a great opportunity to see all of them. And sometimes actually I connect with the other gather group leaders. I'm like, we're combining this week because I want to see you guys.
Right. It's cool to have that autonomy though.
Yeah.
I was randomly thinking in general, because this is a thing that I think a lot of people don't do nowadays, and you can do it in many different ways. But you said something that I've been like doing more, and that's asking questions and just letting the universe, letting the Lord, whatever you believe in, just answer those questions. Because a lot of people nowadays aren't asking questions. They're just expecting answers. And I'm like, you can't get an answer if you never ask the question.
Right.
Like, you will miss 1,000% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's something that you were saying, and it clicked in my head. I was like, if you're praying or you're reaching out and you're asking questions for things to be helped, like to help you, you will get an answer, whether or not it's going to be the one you want to hear.
Right.
Right.
Like, just like stay there for another 2 years. I'm like, crap.
But like something happened. Like I've had that all last year. I was sitting there, and every morning I would wake up and you'd be like, just get out of bed. I would do a little thing. And, I'm not going to lie.
Don't lie to me. Be honest.
My year has looked real nice. But I put that out there. I was like, every morning, like people forget this. Like we always wake up, you check your phone, check for that social media, but really you should wake up and just be in the moment. Like, hey, I woke up this morning, and I feel like that's a good thing. You woke up, ask a nice question of the universe. Like, hey, what should I do? Is there anything out there I should have done yesterday? So I just thought that was kind of cool.
No, you bringing that up, this might go on like a random tangent, but it's been something I've been thinking about. So here we
love
go.
random tangents.
I feel like just a lot of people in general aren't asking those questions, like you said. And it kind of goes back to our intro to this whole podcast as we talk about asking questions. And that's something that I think, and I'm glad that each one of your Sunday services ends with a question.
Yeah.
Because if you're not asking questions either from God or for God or really anything, really, what are you truly learning from that?
Right.
And I think when you start getting stagnant in your life in general, but especially with something like a core belief of yours, such as a religion or God or whatever that may be, if you stay stagnant in it, you're really not putting your faith in it anymore. Right. If you're not challenging something, there's really no faith to be had.
Right. And I think like it goes back to like who God is too. Like for me, it goes back to like who God is. And so like I can ask those questions because I know who he is and I know his heart. And I think like for me, they defined hope in a different way for me one day. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just changed my life. And I think this is what we're lacking a lot right now is hope. Is like, is having confidence in who Jesus is having hope. Because what is hope?
Yeah.
It's like, it's having confidence that something's going to happen. And so I'm just like, if I have confidence in Jesus, I have hope.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of those things where I was just like, my mind, I was like sitting there, I was like, I've been going to church for 29 years and I just rediscovered what hope was.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing too, is just like continuing to learn more of who the Lord is and like who his, like what his heart is for us and stuff. And so I don't know, it's just like, it's like a little gift every day. He's like, here, have a little nugget today. And I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. And without looking for it and without having the questions, you never would have found it.
Right. Right.
But that's I can't remember we were saying this earlier, but it's like everyone perceives things differently. And yes, God is different to every person, but it's still the same thing. So like you can perceive it to be the person who like got you through this situation, and this person can perceive him to be like, the person who like is omnipotent and does all this stuff, but like everyone perceives things differently. And I was like, that was the random question I had earlier today. And it just made me laugh because you brought that up. And I'm like, after 29 years, you finally heard, you were like, I perceive this differently.
Right. It's like, this is what hope actually means.
Yep. Sorry, that was another one of those.
I feel like every time I look down, every time we have a new episode, the time's gone away from us, and I love it. It just creates more value. But before we start to wrap up here, if you could tell the younger version of yourself one thing, what would it be?
Oh, Emily actually prepared me for this question. I said, do you have any suggestions or any like insight of what they're going to ask me tonight? Okay.
She's like, they only have one question. They have an hour-long podcast. They have one question.
I listen to it every week, and this is the question they always have.
Well, there's 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
What are we sipping on? Oh. And then that one.
I was like, what's the second one? You know, I was prepared, and then I'm like not prepared. I think what I would tell myself is like, it's okay not to be perfect, because like I strived for perfection, and like I'm a people pleaser. And so like, it's okay. Like it's okay. And so like, just keep on moving and grooving. You're fine. Everything's fine. And so I think, and like, I didn't have a bad life. I have a great family. Like, you know, I mean, we all hit our rough patches, but like, you know, you stress over random things.
Of course.
And so like in those moments of panic and stuff, it's like, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything. And I don't like not knowing things. I'm like, come on, can I just know? So I think it's like, it's going to be okay. You don't need to know everything. You don't have to be perfect. So.
Does pottery help you with that? Knowing that each piece you put in there isn't going to be perfect?
No, because I want it to be perfect. I'm like, come on, can you be perfect? And so my house is full of rejects, and my parents' house is full of rejects. And I actually love my rejects, but I wouldn't sell them.
Oh. Which is funny, because like if you follow her on social media, you'll see like the random stories where she's like, oh, hey, that didn't work out well.
Like, hey, guys.
Or you can actually see the ridiculous amount of product that she just put together. Because I saw that the other day. It's like, you made all of that.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, what are your socials so everyone else that's listening can take a look at what you're making too?
Yeah. At More Than Clay is my Instagram, and that's my only social media.
That keeps it simple.
Than, not then.
Than, yeah, with an A. I'm sorry.
Actual grammar.
Do you guys, yeah, but also this is like this has nothing to do with anything, but I want you guys to say WONT and WANT.
Want and won't?
I
Won't and want.
I say it the same way. I say won't and won't.
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 I think it's a Southern thing.
Yeah. I'm like,
that's why I had to ask. Because I'm like, I'm from here, but I don't have an accent per se compared to a lot of Southerners.
Yeah, that's true.
It's more than Clay.
Okay.
Did that help?
Random, yeah.
Okay.
But I asked her that the other week, and I'm like, wait, then?
Because it's than rather than.
Learn something new every day.
Then we're going to go drink some whiskey. Yeah. That's how I think about it.
Well, if you don't know how to spell it, it'll be in the show notes, so click on that. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening again this week. And thank you, Emily, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us and drinking with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. For everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. Please share, subscribe, download, like, all of that fun stuff on the socials. And we are on every major podcast app. Please share with friends, family. And we even have a Buy Me a Coffee now, which is in our link tree that is on Instagram. We will eventually get around to making a Facebook by the time this comes up. So you can check us out there as well.
Yep. Oh, don't forget to check out the Cargo District Recording Studios, which is now our new home for recording all of these amazing sessions.
That's right. Of course, the Cargo District Recording Studios is in the Cargo District in Wilmington, North Carolina, which has amazing businesses in there as well. Tons of places to drink whiskey and get some food. So please stop by. Mess hall
Oh, for sure.
Cheese Smith.
Smith.
All of the other amazing places coming in. And you can come in and give us a visit too. Hit us up on Instagram. We'll come by and say hi.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you all next week. Cheers.